All right, welcome to podcast number 3 of Faded Hand. I'm Greg, this is Joe, and we're just going to pick up right where we left off. So we just finished covering weapon traits and techniques, and we are actually going to skip affinities and arms perks. They pertain a lot more to weapons and classes, so when we get there, then we will cover affinities and arms perks. They're not that interesting right now, and they wouldn't really make sense. So if you want to read it, go to the website and read it. So we're just going to move on to the flow of battle. So this really kind of documents how battle is actually supposed to flow and how things like that work. So first up, the beginning of battle. We've kind of already covered this in some of the other ones. Discard your story hand and then draw your new 4 cards, and that is your combat hand. If you know any magic, draw your alternate cards up to half your hand size. That may change. I think that we're considering making that you just keep your current hand size or draw up to half if you're below that with your story hand, but we're kind of debating whether, I guess that is the same as what it is.
I don't think that's a big deal either way, really.
Yeah.
I kind of like the discarding. It kind of punishes you for... I don't want you to hold good cards because you might fight. So I kind of like the discarding.
True, so just discard your alternate hand and then...
Yeah.
I do like that. That does sound good. All right, so we may make that a thing. Who knows? All right.
I thought that's what it says, right?
Well, it says if you know any...
discard and then redraw.
It says discard your story hand.
Oh.
But your story hand is different than your alternate hand.
Oh, the magic cards?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want you to bring your magic cards into it as well. I want you to reset your magic hand.
Yeah. All right, so we'll change that. All right, yeah. So then, planning phase. We've already kind of discussed this, so at this point, everyone on their turn is going to want to place their cards into their strike, defense, and speed, and then choose what weapon they're holding and things like that. The planning phase is going to be where you will choose pretty much everything about your turn. You're going to want to choose your stance. You're going to want to choose the weapon that you're holding, so you'll have your list of arms that you currently have equipped. So like your sword, your bastard sword, your short bow, your hand axe, something like that. Those are like a standard 3 that you could have, and you would choose, all right, I'm going with my bastard sword, something like that. You'll choose those. You'll calculate your totals, and then you'll say, I'm good to go. If you have magic, you'll look at your spells. You'll think out whatever you kind of want to do, put those away, say, I'm ready to go. And then you will go down. The GM will count down through the initiative order, 15, 14, 13, 12, yada yada, until it reaches your turn if you choose to go. So let's say you have a 9, counts down to 9. You're like, actually, I want to wait to see what this other person does. You can wait to see what they do. Options on your initiative. Change arms. This is kind of during the planning phase. You can change arms.
So you have your weapon equip limit, right? But then your character is a human and he has 2 hands. So you can hold things in those hands. And during the planning phase, you are allowed to make 1 change of all your weapons. So you can change everything you can change what you're holding to anything that you have equipped.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about movement. Movement is very different than almost all other, actually I think just all other tabletop role-playing games that I'm aware of.
I think this is one of our most unique traits as a game.
Yeah. This is probably going to be, for a lot of people, the most complicated piece, but once you start playing with it, it really starts coming naturally. It just, the first few... In one of our playtests that we had where it was just people that we weren't trying to interact with, the first combat, the first 3 or 4 rounds, the one with Samantha, Will, and Gabe, Thomas, the first 3 rounds were a little bit rough, but as once they got going, we just backed off, and their next combat we didn't really have to interfere at all. So I'll read it out and then we'll go through what it means. During your initiative, you may move. Each tile you move causes you to suffer a temporary -1 penalty to a stat, referred to as a movement cost. This penalty is not a malus. It expires at the end of the round. The stat from which movement cost subtracts is determined by your stance. When in aggressive stance, movement cost defense. Defensive, movement cost strike. Evasive, movement cost speed, ×2. Overall, movement generally costs the stat, which your stance does not improve. Evasive allows you to move using your speed. Since points in speed are far easier to acquire, losing it does not compromise your offense or defense. Evasive stance is the best option for moving long distances. Finally, you may not move if your movement cost stat is negative, or movement would cause it to become negative. So, if for any reason you have a 0 defense, you can't move if you're in aggressive stance. You just can't do it. So that is how that works. Joe, do you want to elaborate more on why we have it like this way?
Yeah, so I think this is definitely our most unintuitive, like when you read it, rule. But the idea of that is that what we wanted movement to cost you something, because like if movement doesn't cost you anything, or you get like a lot of free movement per turn, you get the situation that I termed as combat soup, where everyone is like standing in this room and they're positioned somewhere inside it, but it's so easy to move around the room that it's just everyone's kind of interacting with everything, and there's no meaning to standing your character in a particular spot. And that's really irritating because like the fun bit of strategy is to stand in a place and be like, oh, I have control of this important area, like I have a better position, right? If everyone gets 30 free feet of movement every turn, there's no positioning, there's just soup.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have expensive movement, and our idea on movement is that when you move, the idea is that you have to sacrifice something. You're creating some kind of opening in your character. So either you can move and sort of move in an aggressive way and like be ready to attack, but if you do that, you'd be naturally opening yourself up to being attacked. That's why if you're in aggressive stance, movement takes away your defense. You're moving and you're just totally compromising your ability to guard yourself. And conversely, if you move while in defensive stance, you're focusing on defense. So you're moving in a safe way, but you're making no effort to actually attack anyone. So you're compromising your attacking ability. And like if an opportunity came for you to attack, because you already distract yourself by moving and you chose to give up on aggression, you kind of would have no attack power. And then finally, there's evasive stance, and evasive stance is supposed to be where you're focused on movement, and that's when you drop your guard and you drop your aggressive attacking focus, and you're just focusing on moving. That's just like fully letting your arms down and just kind of running. That's why evasive stance gives you -2 and -2. They give you -2 to both to both strike and defense, because the idea is you've really given up on making an effective attack or making an effective defense on this turn.
Yeah. And we're still tweaking evasive stance. I would say every time we playtest, we either tweak evasive stance or we reconsider something about it.
Yeah, evasive stance is the most controversial design-wise, because since evasive stance lets you move a lot, if everyone makes use of it, then you get combat soup again.
Yeah, because originally, when we first started making the game, we had evasive stance just gave you free movement.
It gave you free movement, and it didn't cost you any stats.
It didn't cost anything.
It was 0 stat changes, and you got like 4 tiles of free movement.
Yeah.
And that was absurdly powerful.
And that was insane. And so then we were like, all right, so let's give it a negative. So then I had -1 and -1 in free movement. Way too powerful. So then we said -2, -2 in free movement. Way too powerful. So then we said -2, -2, it costs speed. Better, still a little too powerful, because it's usually once we start kind of counting up how like what your bonuses are going to be, you can usually easily have with the average card a 9 speed. That is reasonable. Being able to just disappear and go 9 tiles was crazy. So now it is so that you can pretty easily, if you have a 9 speed, you can move 4 or 5 tiles, and that's reasonable.
Because like characters in this game will have like, you know, maybe a mid-level character, he might get like 5 strike and like 3 defense and then like 9 speed. So if like someone else is trying to chase you in aggressive stance and you take evasive stance, you can move double their movement that they're chasing you with. And it got really ridiculous. So that's why it costs 2 speed per tile now. And that's why it gives you such a large negative. These were balance changes that were made to make it seem like it was a fair stance to have in the game.
And it will probably get tweaked at some point, but we're happy with the main way it is right now. So yeah, that is movement, and we'll probably touch on that as we continue on at various points. Next up, the attack action. Everybody's favorite action.
Here it is. This is the thing you want to do. This is the main thing.
This is the main thing that people like to do. Using your primary action, you may attack an opponent. The target must be within range for the type of strike you are attempting. Unless otherwise specified, melee weapons have a range of 1 tile, meaning they can target opponents adjacent to you. And this does include corners.
Yes. In this game, the word adjacent includes diagonal adjacency, which is not technically like a standard thing, but that's how we use it in this game.
That's how we use
That's what it means.
Melee weapons have a range of 1 tile, meaning they can target opponents adjacent to you. Ranged weapons can theoretically target any visible opponent, but are generally subject to severe strike penalty when the target is more than a small distance outside of their effective range. I've already clarified that. See podcast number 2 if you're interested in that. When you attack, you compare your strike to the defense of your target. Any perks, traits, blah 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 apply at this time, and only this time. If your strike is at least 2 points greater than their defense of the target, you strike with an effective hit. So I strike with 7, someone defends with 5, I strike a hit. This generally means the opponent is dead or incapacitated. They're out of combat. Failing this, your opponent has successfully defended against your attack. If their defense was at least 2 greater, I strike with 7, they defend with 9. The opponent defended so effectively, they may now attempt a riposte against me. So that means that my attack was so not well thought out, or they were so on their guard, they're able to effectively like parry me to the side and then make a small attack. Not a killing attack. Some people can. That's a special perk.
Yeah,
later.
there's a special ability to let you kill on the counterattack, but as a general rule, you normally can't.
Yeah. So that is the attack action. That one's pretty simple. So let's go through. This is not.
We don't have to discuss field effects.
This is not important. This is for magic stuff. We'll cover that later.
I also don't love the layout of this. I think we thought the side by side was going to look really good, but actually I'm just going to move it.
Yeah, we'll just put that somewhere.
The side by side's hard to use.
This is going to get changed. Should we talk about field effects now, or should we just talk about those when we have magic?
We're going to talk about magic first.
All right, we'll get to magic later.
The field effects are fun. They are very fun.
Field effects are fun, and we will get to them.
But I think classes would make more sense to talk about than to talk about magic.
All right, classes and progression. Pretty much, instead of your traditional, hey, you're level 1, now you're level 2, now you're level 3, and you slowly just go throughout the game with that, we have tiers of play. I'm going to pull up. We're going to go with this.
Yeah. You want to use your big scene?
Yeah, we're going to.
Yeah, so we've got a branching class tree.
So what that means is every character will start out at this novice tier right here. Oh, that's weird. It doesn't show my mouse on there anymore.
Huh.
I bet that's a property that I can change somewhere. Oh.
I know it was a property and I saw it.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, everyone starts out at this novice tier. Oh, there it is. Everyone starts out at novice tier. Then, when they gain their first level, they can move up into anywhere that these lines are going to. So your options are student, scout, lout, and ruffian. And I'm going to break down kind of what each one of these trees is. The student tree is the magic tree. If you want to do some magic, go into this tree. The scout tree is your rogue, sneak around, shoot bow, scouting area guy. Nature-y boy. That's your scout. Your lout is your like defender, soldier guy who's just like your regular weapons master sort of person.
Yeah, he's basically your path to do fighter stuff.
Yeah. And your ruffian is your berserker sort of barbarian, punches people, wrestles people to the ground, and that kind of physical hand-to-hand combat sort of person. Those are the basic breakdown of the trees. Now, after you level up, you're going to enter one of these trees.
So when you start the game, you don't have to pick a class. There's only one class you can start the game in, and it's novice. So it makes your character creation a little simpler.
If you've played a lot of campaigns and you've played a lot of different like characters, you can probably start higher than that. But
it's your game. I can't stop you. But the point of novice is to let players experience the game in a low friction way.
Yeah. So. And novice combat is actually really fun because it's very bare bones, very simple, and
it's just fundamentals. There's no gimmicks.
Yeah, it's very fun. So, once you are in, let's say somebody chooses the scout class, they are going to gain something called their class modifier or their class perk. this is clarified later in this tree. So if you go Scout, you gain the perk Keen Eye. I'll click on that. When you attack, if your speed is higher than your target, gain +1 strike. That one's pretty simple. A lot of the class perks are pretty simple. They're just something that has to do with your class. It encourages something similar to do with your class. So as a scout, you're usually encouraged to be fast and always looking out, sharp-eyed and quick-fingered, right? Like you're always like on the lookout for what's next in battle.
Yeah. We haven't really explained what a perk is, honestly.
That's true. We should do that.
The explanation fits in here. So a perk in this game is a little ability that gives you a specific rule that normally helps you. So it's sort of like a feat maybe in D&D and this kind of thing in lots of games where it's a little ability for you, and in general it is some kind of conditional where under some condition you have some kind of advantage. So for example in Keen Eye, when you attack someone and your speed is higher, you get a bonus strike.
Exactly.
Now perks and class perks are the same type of thing. They're all perks. However, your class perk is the perk that you get for free just for entering the class. And as a rule, class perks are a little bit better than normal perks. We'll call those are called level perks. Because the class perk is you're always going to have to get it, and it's supposed to kind of motivate you to take the class. So it's supposed to be a little juicy for you.
Yeah. And so then, once you're in a tier, this is what's called Tier 1. This is all of these Student, Scout, Lout, Ruffian. Those are all Tier 1s. Then when you level up again, when the GM says, okay, you level up, instead of going from Scout to Hunter, or Scout to Rogue, you get to take a level perk in here. So, if you are on here, and let's say I level up again and I'm Scout, and I go, okay, so my options are Quick-Footed, Target Practice, and Lucky Shot. I can look at each one of those, and I go Quick-Footed, when you cast a spell or attack with a ranged weapon, gain 1 tile of free movement. No defense or opportunity attacks, cool. If I'm interested in doing that ranged route, I might really want to take that. Or I might go with Lucky Shot. When you play 2 cards of the same value, you attack on that turn, gains +2 strike. If I'm not interested in range stuff, that may be a really good move for me. So that is how, so I can choose one of those when I level up. Then I take that, I write that down, and I continue on playing.
So, in general, every time you level, you gain a perk. And if you're in a class, what you do is when you level, you look at the class's perk list and you pick one of those perks to learn. That's what you get for leveling. It's very simple.
It's very simple. We want to do this because sometimes we felt like in D&D, sometimes when you level up, it's like a 20-minute endeavor. Especially,
it takes a long time. And then you spend a long time between levels because you have to spend once you get to level 10, you're extremely powerful as a character. So the GM doesn't want to dole out levels very often. And we kind of felt like that was too... We didn't like how big of a chunk of stuff you get every time you level and how far they were spaced out. So we've designed Faded Hand to encourage you to have level very often, have very common leveling, and instead they only give you a little chunk of power every time you level up.
Exactly. And this brings us to, I think it's time for tiering up. So leveling up is when you just gain your 1 perk. But I go through Scout. Once I obtain half of the level perks in a tier, the next time I level up, I have the option to tier up.
They're always odd numbered, so you'll always get slightly more than half.
Yes. So if I'm in Scout right here, and then let's say I take Lucky Shot and Target Practice, I can then tier up the next time I level, and I can choose whether I want to go into Hunter or Rogue. Then I tier up into Hunter or Rogue, and let's say I go with Hunter. Then I'll automatically gain Sighted In, and now I have access to these ones. So the next time I level up, I can take 1-2, or I can take Field Medicine, or anything like that. Then, since there are 5 of these, I'll have to gain 3 levels, and let's say I take 1-2 Field Medicine or Ricochet, to actually be able to tier up again. Now you may notice, the first time I had to take 2, now I have to take 3. When I level up into Tier 3, I'll have to take 4 before I'm able to continue on.
You can't even continue on. There's nothing to do on Tier 3 at the moment.
Well, you could multiclass.
That's true.
You could go into something else. which I really hope people do.
Yeah, multiclassing is very intended.
And I'll cover that in just a second. So, because it takes longer to tier up, you're expected to get levels linearly. So normally in D&D and a lot of other games, your first the time between level 1 and 2 is about is like first session. First session you start at your level 1, end at your level 2. Then it's like 2 sessions, 2 to 3. 3 sessions, 3 to 4. This continues on until getting from like 5 to 6 or 6 to 7 is a solid 6 or 7 sessions, and that's just a long time, and it feels really,
It's gonna be like a month of real life time.
Yeah.
Before you get another thing on your character.
Yeah. And so versus in Fated Hand, we encourage GMs to say every single session, or every combat or every other combat, you level up.
I also really enjoy the experience in games of making a build and like sitting there with the list of abilities and like looking at each one and thinking about how they work together. And one of the things I feel that D&D is missing is optional stuff like that, where like your ability to get optional power, like your choices that you make on your character are kind of limited. You mainly level up inside a class, and then that class gives you all the stuff that it's going to give. They play very similarly.
And occasionally you'll have a feat or something,
yeah,
but overall.
Which is, again, not it's supposed to not be a hard criticism. D&D is a fun game. But I want to make builds and stuff. I want to make different characters. And Fated Hand is supposed to enable that, because as a rule, you're probably about going to take only half the perks in a class. So that means you'll leave half the perks untaken. And even if you proceed on the same class tree, even if you proceed on the same class path, you could take an almost completely different set of perks every time and probably have a character that plays so different.
Exactly. And going along with how to make different characters, would you like to talk about multiclassing, or do you want me to?
Yeah. You can talk about multiclassing.
Yeah. So I really love the multiclassing system in Fated Hand. The reason I love it is because you get levels linearly instead of exponentially. It allows you to multiclass easily, because in D&D, let's say you want to multiclass. You're a level 5 wizard and you want a multiclass fighter, and you take your first level in fighter. First level in fighter is not that great. It gives you a little bit more hit points. It gives you proficiency in some weapons, and you get like your healing thing.
Your second wind, yeah.
Second wind. That's pretty much it. Now this is nice, like it's good to have, but a 6th level wizard is really good. And the time between you take that first level in fighter and you get your little thing until you spend like probably a month in real time until you get your next level is a long time.
It's harsh.
Right? And so for all that time you're a 5th level wizard and a 1st level wizard, and we didn't love that. So here's how multiclassing works in Fated Hand. Every time you have the option to tier up, you can choose to go into any tree that you have previously had access to. And because everyone starts at novice, everyone constantly has access to all of these 4. So let's say I'm up here into hunter, and then I get 3 of my perks. And then I say, actually, I also want to be able to do magic. I can easily pop in and go into student, and then I can take 2 levels in student, because I can take my first level to get in, and I can take 2 more, so that's 3 levels. Then I can get out and then go into sniper or assassin again. I've taken a little bit of time, spent some time in student, learned some magic, but I don't have to stay in that tree. I'm not tracked there. I've gained a few perks, and I can get out and go do something else. It's not as much of a time investment because you level up linearly, and I really love that.
In addition, anytime you level, you always take a perk. You're not required to take a perk in the class that you're currently in. You're allowed to take a perk that's in the perk list of any class you've been in previously. So this means because you take half the perks in a class. If you want to, you can tier up, but then just keep taking the perks from an earlier class. The main reason to this would be if you just really want one of those perks. As a rule, the perks get a little more powerful the higher in tier you go, so you're unlikely to want to do this a lot. But it could be pretty relevant in a multi-classing scenario where you got half the perks in student, you classed up to sniper, but then you decide you still want to focus on magic a bit more.
Yeah. Now, there's also I do want to specify this does not help you tier up. So if I'm a tier 2 hunter and a tier 1 student, and I'm currently in student, I can't. If I'm like, say, a level 1 student, I haven't completed half my perks, I can't tier up into sniper. You can't have a foot in both doors of not having complete trees on either one.
Once you class into a class, the only way to leave that class is by leveling up and getting half the perks in that class.
So that's how I just want to specify that. But yeah, that is how leveling and tiering up works in Fated Hand, and I really love that system.
By the way, how do we say this interacts with duplicate perks?
It counts.
We say it counts?
It counts as if you already have it.
Okay,
Because I think
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I think that Witch and...
I did quite a few duplicates.
I think that Witch and Cleric have like one of the same perks or something like that. That counts as if you already have.
A ton of them have shared perks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of situations where one class that is meant to be strong in a particular skill gets a perk at tier 2, and then similar classes that aren't meant to be as strong get that perk at tier 3.
Okay, yeah. Yes, it counts as if you already have that perk. So let's say, I'm not sure if this is actually true, but for example, let's say Brigand gets a thing that lets them punch hard, or lets them hit hard, right? And then later, Man at Arms gets something that lets them hit hard.
A good example would be practice drills. Practice drills is a common tier 3 feat that is perk that's really good. And so, for example, like Man at Arms has access to practice drills, and Monk has access to practice drills. So if you go into Man at Arms and then you take practice drills when you're a Man at Arms, then later you multi-class and you end up in Monk, you'll be able to since you already have practice drills, you can't take it again, and you'll be technically 1 point closer to classing out of Monk without needing to actually level. So you can get a bit of synergy by playing classes that are similar to one another. The disadvantage to this synergy is that you're playing classes that are similar to one another, so why don't you just, keep playing them?
But,
it's your choice. You can probably spend some time to make an incredibly overpowered character by carefully picking synergistic perks and being at like level 50. And I have no interest in writing a rule that stops you from doing that. I think that's cool.
And we would like to see you do that.
If you're gonna play the game and make a god character, who are we to stop you?
Do it and show us your character on our Discord, because that would be really cool to see. Okay, so I think that will be all for this podcast, and probably for the next multiple podcasts, we are going to be going through just this entire class list.
We'll discuss class by class and perk by perk, and sort of give an overview of what each class is for and what strengths it has and what perks you can get in it.
All right. Tune in next time.
Remember, the game is free, and it's linked in the description.
Goodbye.